This year was the first time that WWE's SummerSlam ever went to a two-night format, similar to what they've been doing for WrestleMania over the past couple years. And hell of a way to start. Not in a good way. In very, very much a bad way. This was a really bad show that was saved by an incredible main event. But from beginning to end, nothing but disappointment after disappointment on this show. And I feel like you could really see the two nights here. Like matches that would never have been on SummerSlam if it was a one night card were shoved onto this show and just oozed mediocrity. Like we're watching Sami Zayn versus Karrion Kross, the Judgment Day versus Charlotte and Alexa, Randy teaming with Jelly Roll to take on Drew and Logan Paul. It was a night riddled with just middling nothing wrestling. There were some good points throughout. Like I said, the main event was a huge, huge highlight, and I'm going to lavish some praise on that when we get to the end of the video. But really disappointing stuff throughout the rest of the night. What we're going to be doing in this video is going match by match, discussing how they worked, how the stories coming in affected them and potential directions to go forward. And I'm also going to be giving my star rating for each match on a scale of 0 to 5 stars. I want to let you guys to let me know what you thought of SummerSlam Saturday down in the comments below. And if you're more anticipated for SummerSlam Sunday, after this show, I really can't say I am. But let me know what you think. And while you're down there, subscribe, leave a like, stuff that really, really helps a new channel like mine to grow. But with all that being said, I am Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling. And let's go ahead and get into it with our opening match for SummerSlam Saturday. Before I get talking about the first match, I want to go off on a little bit of a side tangent. And it does relate to the first match, so I will tie it back eventually. But it's just sort of this realization that I've been coming to for a while, and I feel like was really, really present in this first match. I feel like the typical tag team match format is dead in 2025, and that format is the baby faces start off with some super hot fast-paced action to throw the heels off their game. Then the heels come back. They have an extended heat sequence where they're working over one of the babyface team. That leads to a hot tag where the other babyface member comes in, kicks some ass on both of the people in the ring, and then it goes into sort of a back and forth shootout for the last, third or fourth of the match. But I feel like that is a style of match that can really only be achieved by the best wrestling tag teams on the planet. I think of FTR, I think of the Young Bucks, I think of when Aussie Open were wrestling, when the Briscoes were wrestling, when DIY was wrestling in NXT. Those were the teams that could accomplish a match of this format. But most teams cannot, because the heat sequence, the heel heat sequence, is supposed to be boring. Not boring, I shouldn't say boring. It is supposed to want the crowd to come up for the babyface hot tag. So you have to pull the action down a little bit. But what that often means is it does get boring when you just have some people hitting a few moves on a babyface, then doing some posturing to the crowd and not really doing the sort of fast-paced dynamic offense you would want to see, because that would result in the crowd getting behind the wrong team. It's a format that just doesn't really work. It worked better in, the 80s and the 90s because wrestling back then was a little bit more slow, a little bit more methodical, so that sort of that slower pace to the heel team was more commonly accepted, and people had more practice at it so they could make it effective and they could make it entertaining. That leads me into Roman Reigns and Jey Uso versus Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, a team that I just call Braun and Braun because I get confused when I say Braun and Bronson. So I just say Braun and Braun versus Braun and Bronson, Braun and Braun. They were taking on Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. Boring for large parts of this match due to that tag format that I was discussing a minute ago. because Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, Braun and Braun, were not very good at holding my attention while they were doing their extended heat sequence on Jey Uso. And it's sort of the antithesis to what these guys should be, because these are big powerhouses who, at least in Braun Breaker's case, are supposed to be taking over the WWE one day. So while they are facing Roman Reigns, who is the top guy in WWE, and Jey Uso, who is everyone's favorite wrestler on Raw, you have to sort of level yourselves up to look at their level, and just doing some punches and some kicks and some slams and then posturing to the crowd for a long, long time didn't achieve that goal. I feel this match let down the characters of these two men, of Braun and Braun. It let their characters down and did not best represent who they are and the trajectories that they are on in WWE. And this match was like it was 21 minutes according to Cage Match. I would have to guess at least 8 of those minutes were the heat sequence on Jey Uso. And it just seeped my investment of the match right out of me. And that sucks, because there was a lot of good stuff in this match after the heat sequence. Spears through the barricade, which, are what they are. So let's talk about the spear through the barricade, because I feel like that's a really good example of highlighting why the heat sequence was so damaging. So you had this extended heat sequence, and then it comes back and they're hitting a lot of big moves, and Roman hits a spear through the barricade on Braun Breaker. I didn't love the spear through the barricade, and that should be just like a cheat code for fans to get invested in the match and to come up and make noise and pop. But I didn't like it because I was so disinterested in the match, and they had to win me back after the heat sequence that I was being hypercritical of the other things I was seeing. If I saw, a spear through the barricade, I'm sure there was one of those in Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns versus CM Punk at Mania, and I probably loved it because I was so invested in the action of the match and they had me on the hook from the beginning. Whereas this match that lost me right at the beginning was trying to pull me back in over the lengthy 20-minute runtime. Stuff like that just didn't work, because I was going, I see this all the time, and I was being critical rather than just allowing myself to fall into the fiction of the match and really enjoy it. Same with some of the dives. Like, I really liked Roman Reigns and Bronson Reed's dive, but I was being a little bit more critical of them than I normally would, because my investment in the match was detracted as a result of that extended heat sequence. Having said that, after the heat sequence, when the baby faces do come back, the match does get really, really good. It's back and forth. It's what you would want to expect. This is where Braun Breaker starts to come out to the character he should have been portraying across the entirety of this match. Someone who does a lot of big power moves and is just sort of this big meathead jock. Yeah, I feel like the second half saved this match from what would have been complete mediocrity. And it was a good match overall, I would say, but it had the ceiling of greatness that it didn't achieve, because the runtime was too long and the heat sequence was just way too long. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like the majority of the match was good. And in this little review section, I've spent more time talking bad about the match than I have talking about the good stuff. But that's because the bad stuff really was fixated in my mind more so than the good stuff. So it made it harder to enjoy the match as a result. If they were to take the heat sequence and shrink it from 8 minutes to 3 or 4 minutes, this could have been a 4-star plus match, because the action was that good when the babyfaces made their comeback. It could have been like a 15-minute banger party match to open SummerSlam, but as a result of the extended runtime and the laborious heat sequence, it was a match that was really, really forgettable and boring in long stretches. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, for the women tag titles, it was Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss beating Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez of the Judgment Day. And this is a match that I feel heavily suffered from being too identical from the match that came before it. It was following essentially the same format as Roman and Jay versus Braun and Braun. Hot babyface start, heels take over, babyfaces come back and win. And it was a more truncated version of it, a lot more compact and a lot more actiony. But it was nowhere near as good as the opening match. Like, it really suffered as a result of that because the action wasn't as good. Raquel, Roxanne, and Alexa aren't really workers to the level where they would be able to surpass the stuff that happened in the opening match. And it really just sort of fell flat as a result. Now, there were some things to like in this match. Alexa accidentally hitting Charlotte, and then Charlotte looking like she was going to turn, but hitting Raquel with a big boot instead. That was fun. Charlotte, I just think throughout the entire match was really hard hitting, and a lot of her stuff looked really effective. But I was really bored throughout long parts of this match. I did not think this was a very good match. This was a very much a TV match, in my opinion, something you would see on Friday Night SmackDown. And that is an indictment of it because not a lot of great stuff happens over there. A match that I didn't feel needed to be on the pay-per-view and didn't really get elevated as a result of its place on the pay-per-view because I felt like the outcome was never really in doubt and the action wasn't good enough to maintain my attention, especially after the first match where I was sort of so taken out by the heel heat sequences that when it started to happen in this match, it was an immediate light switch in my brain going, what else can I focus on? Should I be looking at my phone? Can I be focusing on something else that's happened around me rather than engaging with this match? So I feel like it was a very big miss on the part of the bookers to book something so similar after the first match. It really suffered for it. It was fine in terms of action. Some sloppiness throughout with, Alexa and Roxanne. But it was just whatever. It was a really forgettable TV match that somehow wound up on pay-per-view because of the importance of the title change, and we're looking to get over Charlotte and Alexa. So I gave it 2.25 out of 5 stars. Sami Zayn versus Karrion Kross was on next. And it was terrible. And it was sort of depressingly terrible. Because in my mind, and seemingly the minds of a lot of the fans of WWE, Sami Zayn is one of the next top guys, one of the early contenders for a 2026 Royal Rumble winner to win a title, a world title, at WrestleMania. And he's had a terrible feud with Karrion Kross that has had largely terrible matches that led to this, which might be the worst match in their series so far. It was real bad and did not set Sami Zayn up in a good place going forward. I think that the action in it was fine. It was short. Let me look on Cage Match to see how long it was. It was 8 minutes, which is fine. The action, yeah, it was whatever, but it was the story that was so terrible. And the reason that it is so negatively affecting to Sami Zayn is because if you are pushing him as a top guy, top guys in professional wrestling often are able to elevate terrible storytelling. Like if you think about Cody Rhodes in the aftermath of WrestleMania 39 when he lost to Roman Reigns and he was being paired, in tag teams with Jey Uso and filler feuds with Dominic Mysterio, and just not a lot of great stuff was going on. He was able to elevate all of that material because he was a top star and he had this sort of gravity and aura that he brought with him. And Sami Zayn in this match didn't have that. And I love Sami Zayn. He's one of my favorite wrestlers on planet Earth today. So it really pains me to say that this was a miserable failure of a match. He was not able to elevate the story or the melodrama of this match past being just schlock. So here's some of the things that I had trouble with. This is also something that I really struggled with in the opening match with Braun Breaker. Which is monologuing. It's become really prominent since the pandemic in WWE of mid-match just sort of yelling at your opponent to get some of the story beats forward rather than telling that through the physicality and action of the match. I think Braun Breaker is one of the worst at it. And it really negatively affected the opening match, but it was painful here of Karrion Kross just yelling like, say it, do it, say it over and over again. Brutal. And then the whole thing with the lead pipe where Karrion was going to use it, Sammy reversed it into a blue thunder bomb. The pipe fell to the side, and then Scarlett handed it to Sammy to try to bring out his dark side. You are in a professional wrestling company. Your goal as a wrestler in the company should be to win as many matches as possible so you can then win a championship, so you can be prominent on television, you can make more money, and you can be at the top of your field. Attempting to have someone hit you with a lead pipe to turn them to the dark side is the antithesis to that opinion. It is so cartoonishly goofy, melodramatic schlock. It doesn't make any sense. And I hate one of my biggest pet peeves in wrestling, one of the things that I hate the most in wrestling is when you have a good guy, one of the baby faces, about to cheat or use a weapon or just do something nasty, and then they sort of have this moment of realization that no, that's not who I am. I'm not a bad guy. I am a good guy, and they throw that away and they choose to do the right thing. The immediate example that pops in my mind is Ospreay versus Strickland at Forbidden Door, when Ospreay was going to stab Prince Nana with a screwdriver, and then he sort of had to look at his hands like, who am I? What have I become? Same thing in this match. Sami Zayn looking at the lead pipe like, am I going to use it? Am I going to use it? No, I'm not going to use it. I'm the baby face. Terrible, terrible stuff. This was one of the worst matches I have seen this year. I don't think it's the worst. I don't think it can anywhere be as bad as John Cena versus Cody Rhodes at Mania or Minoru Suzuki versus Butterbean at that GCW show over Mania weekend. But it is really, really bad. This is immediately in contention for the worst wrestling match of the year. One of the worst matches that I've seen this year. Really, really awful stuff, an awful way to cap a really, really bad story and a failure at booking who will hopefully be one of your top stars and world champions going forward. An all-around mess, an all-around disaster. Before I get into the WWE Women's title match, I don't know if I actually gave my star rating for that match, the Sammy versus Karrion match. I gave it 1 star. Rightfully so. Let's get into Tiffany Stratton versus Jade Cargill. 7 minutes, the shortest match on the card, and I think it was all the better for it. Aside from the main event, this was some of the best booking on the show. Not because it resulted in a great match, but because it didn't result in a terrible match. Jade Cargill in a singles match on pay-per-view is not something that I have ever cared to see. When she was in AEW, when she's in WWE, they've always been bad. So I did not have high hopes for this match. And I like Tiffany Stratton, but I don't put her in the ring general position, those people who can carry a great match out of anyone, like Bret Hart with Tom McGee, Bryan Danielson when they were teaming him or pairing him with Big Cass, like those kinds of guys who elevate talent past where they are to make them look great. I don't associate Tiffany Stratton with that role, so I was really nervous about this match. But having it go 7 minutes and having it just be a shootout with big move after big move after big move, I think is the best way to book this match. I feel like while it wasn't great, it was good. And I really, really respect the booking for being able to recognize what will give us the best match and presenting that to us. So it's a 3-star match. Nothing really fancy, nothing to love here. They just got in, hit a bunch of big moves, and got out. What I want to talk about is the booking, because I was surprised that Tiffany won. I thought that this was really an easy setup to have Jade win and then potentially spin off into a feud with Bianca Belair. Like, I don't really know where Jade goes from this loss. I don't feel like there's a clear direction for her to go forward. I also don't feel like there's a clear direction for Tiffany Stratton going forward. Like, who is her next feud going to be with over on SmackDown? Because Naomi's off to Raw. We've done stuff with Nia Jax. Bianca's injured. We just finished up with Jade Cargill. Like, who is left on SmackDown to really feud with Tiffany Stratton? I'm worried that Tiffany's just sort of going to get lost in the shuffle, which is weird because she's the top women's champion, but I feel like she just might get thrown into some, whatever TV feud with whatever, Candice LeRae or something. And I love Candice LeRae. I'm not bad-mouthing her. But I feel like these two might get a little bit lost as we go forward. The result was a little bit weird. I'm happy with it. I like Tiffany Stratton a whole heck of a lot more than I like Jade Cargill, and I like the booking of this match. But I have absolutely no idea where we go forward from here. Jelly Roll teamed with Randy Orton to take on Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul. And this match went 17 minutes. It was the third longest match on the card, behind Roman Reigns and Jey Uso versus Braun and Braun, and CM Punk versus Gunther. 17 minutes. That is a travesty. That is insane that you would book this match to go 17 minutes. Because when you look at what this match is, there is not a lot to it. Let me start by telling you what I liked. I thought Jelly Roll's selling in the ring was pretty good. Not his sort of whimpering and acting when he was, on the outside talking to his wife, getting hauled away by the refs. But when he was bumping and when he was selling, he looked pretty good. I feel like Drew and Logan in this match were very entertaining. Not necessarily in terms of the action, but in terms of the mannerisms and the charisma that they displayed. Those are the two things to really like in this match. Outside of that, it is very, very laborious in terms of action. Every complaint that I put on Roman and Jey versus Braun and Braun earlier, copy and paste to this match, but 10 times more. It was so annoying to watch this match. To watch a celebrity like Jelly Roll. Like, I don't listen to Jelly Roll. I don't care about Jelly Roll. I don't really know a lot about him. So he didn't really elevate this match for me. I wasn't excited to see it because he was in it. And he didn't do anything of note in this match. He's not like Bad Bunny, who when Bad Bunny wrestles, does some legitimately great stuff in there. So each time I see him, I'm more excited than the last time I was to see what he's going to do. He just sort of did some bumps, hit some bad moves, did some bad acting, and this was a really, really bad match. I don't have a lot in the way of critical analysis of this match because it was just such a misfire, in my opinion. having another heat sequence, another extended heat sequence in a tag match on this card for the third time to increasingly diminishing results was such a wrong move. Like, this as a celebrity match needed to go 8 minutes. And oh, it was just terrible, this match, dude. I hated this match so much. And it's partially because it was so long. If it was 8 minutes, 2, 3 stars, whatever, it was so long. And there was good stuff in there. Drew's Claymore to Randy was fun. Logan Paul's dive off the top through the table, fun. But so much nothing. I felt like my brain was melting when I was watching this match. I would recommend watching Sammy versus Karrion Kross over this match. I thought it was just so the antithesis of what I want to watch when I'm watching wrestling. Because, like, right now, AEW is going well. The New Japan, the G1 Climax is going. Stardom's 5-star Grand Prix is going. There's a lot of truly great wrestling to watch on the planet, and I dedicated 17 minutes to watching this. It's almost an insult. I hated this match. It was one of my least favorite matches of the year so far. There was some fun stuff in there, so I can't give it 0 stars, but I'm going to give it 1 star. The same as I gave Sammy versus Karrion earlier. Abysmal, abysmal stuff. All right. The sludge is out of the way. We can now talk about the main event. A legitimately, truly incredible, great match. CM Punk defeats Gunther in 30 minutes. 30 minutes and 19 seconds to win the World Heavyweight title. So let's talk about what I liked about this match. No. Let's talk about what I loved about this match, because I loved this match. It was great in 2 regards. It was great as a standalone match, and it was great as a means to set up a Seth Rollins cash-in after. Spoiler, Seth Rollins cashed in at the end. It really nailed everything it's going for. So the basic story of the match was Gunther was dominating CM Punk, kicking him, chopping him, stretching him in submissions, really working him over. And Punk really did a great job of selling that. And it was long too. Like, it was long periods of Gunther just beating up CM Punk. But unlike the heat sequences we get in the tag match, this one was so entertaining because Gunther is so charismatic. He has this incredible ability in the moments in matches in between moves to just sort of really draw the crowd in even more than they already were into hating him. And when he hits people, he hits them hard. He really makes you feel the impact of every chop and every boot. And I don't know how hot it was when these guys were wrestling, but they were sweating buckets throughout the entire match. Great, really put forth the struggle. Both guys were bleeding from their chests at some points because of chops. Great, really puts over the struggle. This match just had a great sense of struggle throughout. And Punk was getting worked over for a long time. He had some flurries of hope, but really Gunther was on top for probably 90% of the match. The tide really turned when they went to the outside and Gunther was doing some posturing on the table and Punk swept his feet out from under him. Gunther took a really convincing header onto the table and then was cut open after that. And when Gunther was busted open and he was bleeding either from the forehead or no, it was definitely from the forehead, but he was playing it like he maybe broke his nose as well. He looked terrified because Gunther, I don't know if I've ever seen Gunther bleed in WWE. and he was bleeding here, and he looked like, what's happening? I'm completely out of my element. This guy who I've been beating up for the past 25 minutes is now pushing me to an area that I've never been before in WWE. And that threw him off his game so much that Punk was able to unleash this flurry of offense that ended with two go to sleeps to get him the victory and get him the title. I felt like it was a fantastic story. And it sort of played into this idea that Gunther wanted to upstage Punk and show that he was better than him. And for the majority of the match, he was better than him. But that was his main goal in the match. It wasn't to win the match or retain his title, it was to upstage CM Punk. So rather than trying to get the win, he was trying to inflict as much hurt and as much damage as possible. And that clouded his judgment. Whereas Punk, the entire time, was just focused about surviving and winning. And the two different mentalities they had separated the two men and ultimately gave CM Punk the win. I thought it was such a fantastic story and so elegantly built. And the second reason I felt the match was incredible is because it's so wonderfully built to the Seth Rollins cash in. I'll talk about the cash in after because I feel like that one was a little bit in terms of the actual execution. But in terms of setting up someone for a cash in, I can't really think of a better example of the babyface has just been through hell. Oh my God, here comes the heel to steal it all away from us. You know, the first one comes to mind, John Cena just going through Elimination Chamber, beating Carlito and Chris Masters, and then Edge comes out and cashes in. Jeff Hardy going through the ladder match. No, maybe not a ladder match. I can't remember, but Jeff Hardy getting cashed in on CM Punk. Those are the two examples that come to mind of, oh my God, this guy's just been through hell and now he's got to deal with this as well. Because the entire match really had Gunther beating the hell out of CM Punk and getting the crowd into it. And you could look at it from the perspective of it's building to the Punk win at the end, so it's really making him look like the resilient babyface, which is true. But also on the same terms, it is building to just draining everything out of CM Punk. So the two go to sleeps he hits at the end are the last gasps that he has. There's nothing else in the tank. If Gunther kicked out, he would have lost the match. CM Punk would have, because he had absolutely nothing left, but he just barely manages to get the win. Here comes Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins beats him. Seth Rollins is the new world champion. I feel like it was such an incredibly effective way at telling two stories at once. I was just so impressed by this match. I was blown away by its construction and the storytelling beats in it. And the action wasn't necessarily anything blow away. It was really, really hard hitting throughout and really physical. There were some moments of sloppiness in it. Gunther just completely whiffed a kick at one point, and CM Punk took a little bit long to get into a sharpshooter. But really, you were invested in the action because it felt gritty and it felt real and it felt sort of brutal throughout. And all of that then influenced the story of the cash in after. I feel like it was a pitch perfect execution. If the action were a little bit better and there wasn't some of that sloppiness that is CM Punk in 2025, this probably would have been a 5-star match in my opinion. It's not quite there. I gave it 4.75 out of 5 stars. I loved this match. I felt like it was so absolutely fantastic. Let's talk about the Seth Rollins cash in, because I didn't think that was fantastic. When he came out on crutches, it was a little bit too much, in my opinion. I could have been okay with it if he came out on crutches and he was just sort of posturing to Punk, and then Braun attacked from behind and Seth cashed in as a result. But Seth coming out on crutches, then turning around and going back, but then dropping them and taking the knee brace off, it was all way too performative and over the top for me. I wouldn't call this one of the best cash-ins ever. The match leading into it, Gunther versus Punk, was the setup for one of the best cash-ins ever, but the cash-in itself wasn't super effective, and I feel like it also partially wasn't effective because a lot of people could see it coming. And because Seth Rollins' injury has been touted as being a work since it happened on Saturday night's main event, that it wasn't really like the, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening when he came out. A lot of people were expecting it. So the match, incredible, an amazing way to build to this cash in. The cash in itself, it was just okay. And those were my thoughts on SummerSlam. It all depends on how you leave them. And they left us with a real high on this one. An incredible match, two new world champions, but the rest of the card was pretty trash. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you agree with my opinion that the rest of this card was so missable, full of TV matches, and just really bad, boring action throughout? Or am I overdoing it too much, and was there something to love on this card that I potentially overlooked? Are you excited for SummerSlam Sunday coming at us tonight at the time of me recording this video? Let me know down in the comments below. I would like to thank you guys so much for watching and sticking with me through these videos that I've been releasing this year. I am going to release a review for SummerSlam Sunday. Hopefully I can get that to you on Monday. If not, on Tuesday. I do work a full-time job outside of this, but I'll try to get that to you as soon as possible. Please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment, all that jazz, as it really does help a new creator like me to succeed. But with all of that being said, I once again want to thank you guys so much for watching. I've been Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling, and I will see you next time.